What's up, you guys? Justin Rivas here. I've created this video for you because tons of you guys have been asking about my Panasonic G7, the settings I use, and how well it focuses. All completely fair questions, and so we're going to walk through that on the video, and we're just going to go with it. So whatever ends up happening, ends up happening. But big settings on here, I guess color-wise, which is what lots of people ask about, is I am using the standard profile but custom set where I've got contrast at +3, sharpness +2, noise reduction at 0, and saturation at +2. Other big settings we need to talk about: focusing. I leave it in the AFS/AFF setting, but I make sure that I go into the menu here and have continuous autofocus on under the little video icon. So do that and it's going to continually focus. Lens down. Other important settings in here: metering mode, I set to the single point, which is the little dot at the bottom. What that does is it makes sure that whenever I'm focused on my face is going to be the right brightness. If you have it set to the entire scene or different things like that, what could end up happening on a really bright day is your face is completely dark and the sky looks good, but I want people to be able to see my face, so I leave that in the bottom. What else? I think those are kind of the big ones. I do put the mic level adjust. I have it at -6 dB with the limiter on, and that just takes care of me when I talk really, really loud and generally smooths out the audio, and I don't have to do a lot of work in post. That's an important setting. Other than that, what do we need to talk about? The AF mode that I use on the camera is I use the single point. I don't know all the technical details behind this, but your camera always focuses the best right in the middle. So I'm typically have the area set right kind of middle, up a tiny little bit, so that it's right around where my face is going to be. And I go with that setting. I tried the face tracking and some of the other things. They just didn't work as well as simply having a single point. As well as you're able to kind of like turn the camera on something else, and then it focuses on right in the middle of the frame. So that seems to work well for me. I use aperture priority mode, so I'm able to control the depth of field, which is kind of how blurry the background is or how much stuff is in focus. If you don't know about aperture, there's another video around here. That's an important thing to be able to understand, but other than that, I basically leave the ISO to auto, let the camera sort that out. White balance is set to auto. It does generally a pretty good job. In aperture, I just end up using the front dial to control whether I want a big or a little aperture. And I think those are mostly the settings. Now, I have the little kit lens on here. My main lens is this, the Panasonic 7 to 14 millimeter. I also have the Panasonic 12 to 35 2.8. This is a really nice lens, but very expensive. And a couple other prime lenses. But people have been asking lots about how is the focusing on the G7. So why don't we just do a test? And I feel like the lenses make a difference. I feel like when I went from the kit lens to this much more expensive lens, that the focusing got a lot better. But I've just been doing a little bit of testing, and I'm like, well, it's actually kind of similar. This thing seems to focus really fast and really well in the little bits of testing that I've done. But generally, this camera focuses really, really well. But I'll make this caveat with Panasonic lenses. It has this depth from defocus technology, DFD, which lets it calculate focus a lot quicker, but it only works with Panasonic lenses, so keep that in mind. But let's hop into a quick focus test here. And so I've got this lamp on here, and I've got something over there. We'll flip over to the camera view, and we're just going to go back and forth and see how it does here. So it's in the continuous autofocus, so I've got the focus on the lamp, and I'm going to try these pictures in the back, which aren't all that well lit, and boom, it's got focus. We're going to come back to here, and focused, and back the other way, focused, and this way, focused. Come on, there we go. Okay, so it can be a little bit slow, but overall I would say that's pretty darn good. Now let's throw on another lens here and see how it does. Let's try this expensive 12 to 35 millimeter and see if it makes a big difference. Don't roll off the table. There we go. All right, so here we go. We're going to start the recording here again. And we're going to go from close and focused, and far, focused, and close, focused, and far, focused, and close, focused, and far, focused. So I think that seems a little bit quicker, but honestly, the kit lens did not too bad compared to this like $1,000 lens. And now, obviously, this one works better in lower light, and it's better glass, and it's got some other things for it. But focusing-wise, it's maybe a little bit quicker, but this thing still works pretty darn good. Last test here, we're going to use my main squeeze, the 7 to 14 millimeter. So don't fall. Throw that on here. And let's hit record. And watch this. This is my favorite. Okay, ready and focused and far. Focused and close. Focused and far. Focused and close. Focused. Ah, see, that's why I really like that lens, because being in focus is very, very important. And so typically that's kind of the performance you're going to see. Now, this is actually a very difficult thing to focus on, this lamp, because it's kind of a reflective surface with things in the background. And I put an elastic on it to maybe help a little. And the pictures that I was showing are like actually in a really dark spot. So it being able to go back and forth that quickly is quite good. Now, I'd been ragging on in the comments about this kit lens and saying you kind of need to upgrade away from it, but in the setting I have here, it's actually pretty good. The other thing you need to know, which I would use often, is if you hold down this button here halfway, it's going to speed up the focusing process. So if you're going from something really close to really far, or it's just not seeming to get the focus kind of instantly, just hold that down halfway and it's going to pick up the focus. But I think that's mostly everything with the camera. I shoot in AVC HD at 24 frames a second. Maybe this is a good little sidebar setting to talk about. So this camera can shoot at 60 frames a second, 30 frames a second, or 24 frames a second on standard HD. And then if you go up to the 4K, it can shoot at 24 or 30. But why do I shoot in 24? Well, there's the one aspect that 24 is a little bit more cinema-like. That's what movies have always shot in, that kind of feel at 24 seconds. So it's actually, the footage is slightly blurrier because you've only got 24 individual photos over the course of a second, whereas at 60 frames a second, you've got 60 of them. But there's another big benefit to that, which is, it's a little bit technical, but the shutter speed of your camera, which is how fast it's kind of open and closing, when you're on 24 frames per second, it's able to drop that lower and let more light in. So when you're in darker situations, the camera doesn't have to work as hard to get all the light onto your sensor, as opposed to when you're at 60 frames per second. Typically, your shutter speed is supposed to be double that of what you're shooting at. So for 24 frames a second, it should be 48, rounded up to 50. But if you're on 60 frames per second, it should be at 120 frames per second, which that means that it's opening and closing a lot faster and it can't let as much light in. So that may be technical, but if you find that you're in a lot of low light situations and maybe you're using something like the kit lens, which doesn't let as much light in as something like this expensive lens, you may want to try going down to 24 frames per second. It's going to feel a little bit differently, but the camera's not going to have to work as hard and you're going to get better quality video out of it. I think that's about it for me. If that video was helpful, let me know. Give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions at all, drop it in the comments section below and I would be happy to answer it. Cool. I'm Justin. Thanks for watching.